Let's hit on the Week 8 waiver wire, you guys. This is, I think, an active enough waiver wire for this week that we actually have some guys we want to go after with some sort of vigor. Let's talk about, I'm going to say that Rashod Bateman and maybe the Eagles backs are at the top of this list. And let's talk about the Eagles backs first for a second here, Jake. Miles Sanders leaves that loss to the Raiders with an ankle injury, gets carted off. Obviously, we're sitting here on Monday morning. We don't know anything about the severity of the injury for Miles Sanders. But let's look at it. Kenny Gainwell, surprisingly available in a lot of leagues. Boston Scott, very available in a lot of leagues. How do you go into the waiver decision-making process with those two backs specifically?
Not that interested unless I'm desperate, honestly, because Boston Scott, I just talked about it with Chris Meaney, that's his team. And the reason we're seeing Boston Scott as the lead is because they trust him more. In the past, like Kenneth Gainwell, he's a rookie, and as a lot of rookies will do. But I mean, Kenneth Gainwell, for all intents and purposes, has been kind of written out a good amount the past few games before Sanders got hurt, similar to Tyson Williams getting benched. Is just getting destroyed in the pass block and like wrong assignments, getting blown up. So that's not his game. So I would go Boston Scott before I went with Kenneth Gainwell. Kenneth Gainwell does have, if you want to look at like game script situation, you say, all right, well, they need to pass more, but it's Detroit this week, so you would say this should be a Boston Scott game. But again, this backfield is one that Sirianni is just abandoned, and he tried to get it a little bit more involved this week, as he said he needed to do to help this offense and get a little bit more read option plays with Jalen Hurts. But even so, it's still a split, and it's still one that I don't want to mess around with unless I'm desperate. But if I am, it's going to be Boston Scott.
Yeah, I just think the nature of the running back position and the matchup with Detroit, you're probably if you're hurting at running back, you're definitely looking at Boston Scott. He was the guy that they were using at the goal line there at the end. So, I guess I sort of always had a soft spot for Boston Scott, but like Jake said, it's just such a mess of a backfield. I wouldn't see anything more than like just a straight split, and if Boston Scott's the guy getting the goal line carries, I don't know that Kenneth Gainwell gains a whole lot here overall. If his role changes dramatically, it just might lead Sirianni to lean less on that backfield altogether.
I mean, I'd say this: I'd start Boston Scott over Mike Davis at this point.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, well, Mike Davis is an awfully hard guy to get behind with the way that we saw everything break down.
What about the Mike Davis revenge narrative, though? I mean, Carolina this week.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely going to be activating on that in a big way. Rashod Bateman, how about him, you guys? A guy who is activating, I think, in a meaningful way for the Ravens. 6 more targets. He's now had 6 targets in both games he's played this season, caught 3 of them for 80 yards. We know that there are, fantasy volume-related questions for almost anyone in the Ravens passing game. But, Funston, how much are you buying in after what we've seen from him the last couple of weeks?
Well, I'm buying in on the talent. He's on a bye this week. Come back. Sammy Watkins probably back there in the mix. And Jake's talked about this before. It's very clear that even as talented as he is right now, he is firmly the third option in a passing game that week in and week out you cannot hang your hat on it. You don't know. I mean, it's definitely getting better, and maybe at some point we say, the third option in this passing attack isn't that bad. But right now, you kind of still have some hesitancy with that. So, good talent. It was nice to see him take a step in the right direction. I'm interested to have him kind of right now on my bench. But if he's still out on the waiver wire, I don't know what you're doing this week because they're on bye. I mean, if you have the luxury of just throwing him there and stashing him, that's fine. That's worthwhile.
Yeah, it really comes down to 2 points you made in there, and one of them actually even came from Harbaugh, is that he said, I don't want to play him this much, but the talent is just is forcing his hand, so to speak. Sammy Watkins maybe comes back after the bye, but even if so, what I said to Meaney is I'm treating him like Rondale Moore's first 2 weeks because of the name, because he's a rookie, because of the hype, because of the fantasy community, the draft Nick community, like everybody. The hype around Bateman has always been higher than his value has ever been. And even by having 2 decent games, the value has done nothing but either hold or potentially go up. So I see tons of trade questions in my waiver and ranks column every single week. And I see that Bateman, granted, not every single league, but Bateman's carrying top 30 wide receiver value in trades. And if you can get that, get the hell away from him. And I'm not saying like, oh my God, like he's going to be terrible, but he's a wide receiver 4 going forward. So if you can get that, that's why you get out. And I'm not saying this to victory lap people, but I'm saying everybody who didn't listen for Rondale Moore after the first 2 weeks are kicking themselves right now.
Big Ten contributing some meaningful wide receivers, though. Let's just talk about that. Purdue and Minnesota right there. Getting in there. The Big Ten. Rashaad Penny, let's talk about him really quick, you guys. Plenty of leagues. You can drop someone right now who you didn't start this week and pick him up before the Seahawks and Saints play on Monday Night Football. It's going to be Penny's season debut. We know Alex Collins is going to be out there for the Seahawks as well. What are expectations for him this week, Jake? I mean, what do you think you see? What are you encouraged to see from him this week? We know that Chris Carson's going to be out at least a couple more weeks, so maybe there's a path to Rashaad Penny carving out some sort of fantasy meaningful role, depending on how he goes tonight.
Yeah, look, I think we talked about it last week. I would love for Rashaad Penny to be a thing. I mean, I'm one of the biggest Penny fans there are. People know that. At this point, with the fact that Alex Collins is going to be active, I don't have a lot of hope also because you still have Homer. We still have DJ Dallas. We still have what we went into the season with when everybody was healthy with Chris Carson, as they had 5 running backs. Well, now they're down to 4 just because they don't have Chris Carson. Pete Carroll still gets everybody involved. It's kind of something we've said about Patriots for years on end, is that if it was down to just 2 even, I would be invested. And I do think Penny has the most upside. So, yeah, if I can still make a move right now, or if I didn't already, I would go stash Penny just in case. If he came out of this game as the best option, it wouldn't shock me because that's his talent. But it's his first game back coming off yet another injury. So I have a lot of excitement for Penny. I don't have a lot of excitement for fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, just as a Seattle guy, I would love to see like 8 carries tonight, something like that. And probably he is going to play the same role he's always played, which is kind of like that guy, that they use on the edges in complementary role to the lead guy. I would think Alex Collins will continue to be that guy. But yeah, I mean, Chris Carson's the interesting one because I have not seen any kind of like anybody hazard a guess on when they think he'll be back. I mean, it's just completely up in the air, and I kind of tend to think like this could be a while, if we see him at all this year. Right. So there could be something here. It's worth, casting a line on Penny and just hoping that and Alex Collins isn't 100% healthy, so maybe if Penny is looking good, they actually lean on him a little bit more in this Monday night game, and then you get Jacksonville next week, and suddenly he's looking really good. Yeah,
just real quick. That's the only reason I'm even mildly interested is because I wonder if that Chris Carson even comes back. Like if we knew Chris Carson was coming back like David Montgomery in like 2 or 3 weeks, I'd be like, man, forget Penny. Like that's how frustrating this backfield looks to be. But I'm with Brandon on that. Like some of the reports make it sound like he just might not come back this year.
Yeah, and maybe even more so if Seattle continues to not be much of an NFC playoff contender, which could be the case depending on Russell Wilson as well. Let's wrap this up with just a couple of other names. Michael Gallup, potentially returning from IR in Week 8. Russell Gage had a decent little game against the Dolphins in Week 7. Alan Lazard did the same for the Packers. Brandon Bolden, Darius Slayton. Anyone getting your juices flowing out of that group, Funston, or throw out your own guy maybe?
Well, I mean, if I knew Brandon Bolden was the number 2 in that backfield, I would be interested, But I just don't know. I mean, you just don't know with Belichick. So I guess in Alan Lazard, Marquez Valdez-Scantling's close to returning.
Thursday night though, maybe not back this week.
We've played this game before.
Yeah. You said Gallup. Who else did you throw out there?
Yeah, Gallup potentially returning from IR in Week 8. We've also heard his name bubble around a little bit in trade rumors. Maybe that'd be better for him to go to a spot where he's not competing for targets with CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. Darius Slayton, as long as Giants guys are injured, maybe could provide you a little bit of value. Russell Gage also, we know that's Ridley and Pitts, but still Russell Gage, 4.6, 67, and a touchdown in the win over the Dolphins. Any of those guys for you?
I guess Darius Slayton, because, I mean, who knows who's going to be healthy for the Giants receivers next week, but Darius Slayton's probably in that lineup against that Kansas City Chiefs defense. So I think of all the names you mentioned, if I'm just looking for somebody that I'm going to play immediately in Week 8, Darius Slayton's probably the guy that interests me the most.
Yeah, to go back to the Brandon Bolden thing, I referenced this on the other show too, and it wasn't, again, the name drop of D'Angelo Williams, but I keep bringing it up because because I don't know. I just want to hammer this point home, and I don't know that everybody's heard it. Sure. Is that he said sometimes things happen in practice on Wednesday and Thursday, and you just draw the ire of the coach, and you get benched for a week, especially when you're talking about a rookie running back. Things can happen in practice. Yeah. And the teaching lesson is you're not playing this week. And there's if you're further up the depth chart, it's, you see limited opportunities in the first half, but a message has been made. And I say that only to say it wouldn't shock me if Stevenson was back to being the number 2 this week. So I wouldn't bank on it, but I'm saying that that's why I'm with Funston. And I don't have an interest in Bolden because I don't think we can definitively say he is the number 2 and it's not somebody else this week. So my answer is the same. It's Darius Slayton, but it's Darius Slayton only if Shepard, Tony, and Galladay are 2 out of the 3. At least 2 out of the 3 are back.
I'm laughing because I don't know if Stevenson's getting the message because this feels like about the 3rd time that we thought he was bubbling up and all of a sudden.
All right, Ramondre.
But if you watch the last game. He didn't do anything in the game, so something happened in practice.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm not saying that's not the case. It's just I don't know that the guy's learning his lessons that he's getting midweek from Bill Belichick.